for our first speaker of the day, our keynote speaker. Steve, I think there's a video that I think we're going to start with that.
"25 years ago, ShelterBox was founded with a simple yet powerful mission: to provide emergency shelter to families whose lives have been devastated by disaster or conflict. Because shelter is the foundation for life, a foundation for hope, stability, and dignity. Having somewhere dry and warm to sleep, to prepare meals, and to be with family is vital to starting the long journey of rebuilding your life. What began in 2000 as a Rotary Club project with a simple green box has grown into a global movement working towards a world where no one goes without shelter after disaster. In 2001, we responded to our first disaster in India after a devastating earthquake. In 2004, when a tsunami swept across Southeast Asia, ShelterBox scaled up like never before. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina devastated communities across the U.S. Gulf Coast, ShelterBox responded, delivering emergency shelter to families who had lost everything. In 2010, a catastrophic earthquake struck Haiti. ShelterBox became among the largest suppliers of tents to the country, providing emergency aid to more than 28,000 families who had lost everything. In 2012, ShelterBox became Rotary International's official project partner in disaster relief, strengthening our ability to deliver aid faster to more people through the power of Rotary networks. As conflict forced millions from their homes, ShelterBox responded from Syria to Cameroon to Ukraine to Gaza. ShelterBox has responded to the world's most urgent humanitarian crises, helping families survive conflict and rebuild their lives. In 2019, we opened ShelterBox Operations Philippines, our first permanent office in a disaster-prone country, to respond faster where help is needed most. When the world shut down in 2020, we adapted again, delivering emergency shelter, hygiene kits, and clean water to protect families during the pandemic. Now, in 2025, we celebrate a new milestone: 3 million people sheltered across more than 100 countries. 3 million lives forever changed. To our incredible volunteers, donors, and supporters, you are at the heart of ShelterBox. Because of you, families can rebuild, and because of you, hope endures. Here's to the next 25 years of shelter, resilience, and hope. Thank you for 25 years of impact.
Our keynote speaker today, Kerry Murray, serves as president of the global disaster relief charity ShelterBox. Kerry has worked since 2009 in disaster relief and is often serving on the front lines herself. ShelterBox is an international organization, I'm trying to read this here, for disaster relief, has provided shelter, warmth, and dignity, and has responded urgently to earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, hurricanes, conflicts, and other world emergencies, for over 25 years, as I said in the video. Helping to provide shelter is essential household supplies, and as a team to help during the crisis as a gift to build a better world. Haven't did a very good job there. I introduce Kerry Murray from ShelterBox.
Thank you, Bruce. It's such a privilege to be here with everyone at District 5500. So I want to start by just acknowledging the fact that ShelterBox was founded 25 years ago. It was founded by a small group of Rotarians who believed they could make a difference. And it has expanded over the years to now over 3 million people, over 100 countries, and in disaster as well as conflict situations. And I believe it's all because of Rotary. I want to start by saying a big thank you to a few important people in the room. Don Jorgensen, if you can stand up, long-term ambassador. Also, Leo Lorenzen as well. These gentlemen really carry the torch for this organization here in the district, and it is so appreciated. So I want to start quickly. Kirk has asked me to talk about my relationship with this organization and with Rotary. I am a Rotarian in Santa Barbara, California. I've been in disaster relief since 2009. I was a corporate executive before that for 14 years. And really, it was a Super Bowl Sunday that changed my life when back in 2004, I went into labor. And it was supposed to be an amazing, joyous moment, routine delivery, and everything went wrong. And in an instant, my life changed. One, I had a very sick child. She was never supposed to make it. I wasn't supposed to make it either. But we had something that's so vital, and many of you know that in so many parts of the world, being pregnant can be a death sentence if you need emergency obstetric care, which I needed. So my daughter spent months in the hospital. They eventually said if she lives, she'll never talk. She made her first sound at 6 months of age, and she's now a senior at Columbia University in New York. And a singer to boot. So I realized in those moments when I returned back to GlaxoSmithKline, where I was climbing the corporate ladder. I lived in the US, I lived in Europe, I wanted to be CEO of the organization. But my life changed, and I felt a responsibility that I needed to make a difference. And so in 2009, the CEO of that company sent me on a 6-month assignment to do capacity building, and to take all of those business skills that I had learned at Glaxo over the years and apply them to an organization. So I was 1 month. I arrived in December of 2009, and in January of 2010, a devastating earthquake hit Haiti. It killed 250,000 people, and it displaced millions. Well, I was working as a volunteer for that organization, and they sent me to Haiti. And the first organization I saw on the ground, on the tarmac in Port-au-Prince, was ShelterBox. And I ended up spending some time working in Haiti, and I worked in medical relief at the time. And I went back into my assignment for the remainder of those months I was supposed to spend there, and I realized I could really apply everything I learned in my corporate life, and I could apply it to the nonprofit world, and I could make a difference. And so in the months after the Haiti earthquake, I made a decision to step off the corporate ladder, and I joined that organization for 5 years. And in 2015, I joined ShelterBox USA as its president. And really, the reason has a lot to do with Rotary. It has a lot to do with service and the type of work that we do in the world, which I think is deeply compelling, especially in this moment in 2025. So to share a little bit about the work that we do, and I'm not sure where I point this to get this to work, Steve. Right here. Okay, that's good. I'm going to point it right here. No, it's back here that you need to point it. Okay. So why does ShelterBox exist? Well, because there are more people displaced in our world than any time in recorded history. The UN has come out with the number. It's over 123 million people without a place to call home. And those are people who are displaced by disaster situations. So if you can turn, Steve, to the next view. So it's disasters, so that could be tsunamis, floods, it's earthquake situations, And it's also violent conflict. If you can still keep going through here, this is Ukraine, where we've been serving, as well as the impacts of climate. This is North Carolina last year after the once-in-a-thousand-year storm, Hurricane Helene. So these Rotarians, back in the year 2000, they hoped to help a couple of dozen people a year. And they created what was known as a shelter box. I know Don has showed this to all of you. There's one out in front. So the basic premise is really focusing on your basic needs. Your basic needs are what? Yeah, food, water, shelter, and then access to medical care. These folks focused on the provision of emergency shelter and the basic building blocks to get you back on your feet when you've lost everything. So the basic concept is really, what are the things that you need to sustain your life if you're forced to flee your home? Well, the first step is really the shelter, and it is the first step in the recovery process. I don't know if anyone here has ever lost their home or if you've been evacuated, but I have. And your life stops when you've been evacuated and you're forced to flee. You're not working, kids aren't going to school. It's a very difficult situation. So the big stabilization piece for us is getting people back on their feet and putting a roof over their head in a shelter. It's often tented shelter like you see out here, not always. And so the center of gravity for what we do is shelter, but the other things are the vital things that you need to set up a household. You've lost power, so solar lanterns. The lantern you can also charge your phone with. You have contamination of the water source, so you need clean water. So water filters, containers for clean water, blankets and ground mats to sleep on, basic things like stainless steel cooking sets, some of the most needed items you see in the field. How do you prepare a hot meal, restore a sense of routine and normalcy for a family? Meals are a good way to do that. So over the years, we have been deploying, as you know, tens of thousands of boxes. But actually today, ShelterBox does not deploy boxes any longer. We provide customized shelter kits and packages based on the unique needs of the families that we're serving. And it's always different. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution. The needs that someone will have in the Philippines after a typhoon are different than the needs that they're going to have in Gaza or in Ukraine. So we really work to understand the needs, do needs assessments in the field, and understand how we can best meet those. This is one of the most high impact, low cost items we provide. It's called a shelter kit. It's tarpaulins, tools, and fixins that can create a single room structure or repair a home that's been damaged in bombing. If you can go through the next few, Steve. So I love this photo because this shows what we do. This shows the fact that this gentleman's lost his home. It was in a hurricane, and he's beginning the long road to recovery because he received a ShelterBox package. Next slide. This is a shelter kit. This is in the Philippines, and you can just see the humanity in this picture as that shelter kit provided the basic building blocks for that family to have a home. I'm going to have you keep scrolling through, Steve, if you could. So we mentioned the numbers. Next slide, please. How it's possible. And you can go through all of these, Steve. I'll tell you when to stop. But back 25 years ago, the founders of ShelterBox created really a volunteer service engagement largely built with Rotarians that trains civilian volunteers from all walks of life, from all over the world. They comprise the ShelterBox response team. 1 in 30 people will make it through the program and become a first responder with the organization. And these folks are a lifeline in our ability to do our work and be so many places at any given time. And they are, for the most part, most of them, I'd say about 75% are Rotarians, even today. And they are really the force multiplier that enables us to do this work. So Rotary, you've heard a lot about Rotary. We did become the official project partner of Rotary in emergency response. We remain that partner, and Rotarians on the ground in the communities that we're working in are always the center of gravity for helping us facilitate those really deployments. I've worked hand in hand with Rotarians all over the world, from Ukraine to Morocco to the Philippines, and they are, as you know, people of action, and they get stuff done. And in every disaster response, there are Rotarians at the heart of it. So you've seen some of the big responses. So it started, really the one that put us on the map was that Haiti earthquake. USA was Hurricane Katrina. Syria has been the longest and largest deployment in our history. So it continues even today. It's been over 13 years responding with emergency shelter, winterization supplies to help stabilize families, keep them alive. Our work in violent conflict zones, whether it's Syria, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Gaza, is really the reason why this year in 2025, ShelterBox received its third Nobel Peace Prize nomination. And it's, yeah, thank you. We find out next month, but it's really a privilege to have been nominated. This is the third time. And when we look at conflict, and I know many of you probably just think of ShelterBox on the worst day ever, that earthquake or a typhoon or a hurricane. But what's really driving global displacement is violent conflict. It's not just natural disasters. It's the violent conflict that's taking shape across the world, and it's forcing tens of millions of people to flee. It's a massive piece of our work. It's about 50% of the work of ShelterBox. So you're seeing some of the aid items, and that's a good picture if you go back on why today we are doing things like shelter kits versus just a tent. This is Ukraine. I took these photos, and these are shelter kits that are repair kits because that home has been bombed. People are sheltering in place until they can do the longer term repairs on that home. So we are providing everything from the tarpaulins, which are used on the roofs there, to plastic sheeting, wood stoves, blankets, just the essentials. And it's based on the things that they need in the moment, which can often change even seasonally. So that's why there isn't just one size fits all any longer at ShelterBox. So Gaza, this is probably in my 10 years with ShelterBox been the most complicated work that we've ever done. And the hard part is that when you want to do humanitarian work, but the corridors aren't enabling you to do that successfully. We have done great work in Gaza. Things have stopped for a period of months now, but we have aid staged because of Rotary in Egypt as well as Jordan that is ready to go when we have a clear shot to be able to go in there and help people. But nowhere in Gaza is safe. Over 90% of the population has been displaced, and it is really an avalanche of humanitarian need. This is some of the work that we've done in Gaza. So I'm going to stop here for a minute because this is a newer part of our work over the past several years, which is about more semi-durable shelters, very low-cost, high-impact solutions in places that have prolonged displacement. Many times, especially with refugees, they're not going to be displaced a period of months, or even a few years. On average, it's about 17 years. And so being able to provide a dignified shelter that enables this woman to move forward with her life, it's a single room shelter. It's very inexpensive, and as you can see, that can last somewhere between 10 and 15 years, which is amazing. That's in Somalia. Last slide, please. I want to share our work in Yemen. This is also known as an area of the world with immense humanitarian need. The UN asked us to step in about 4 years ago as a pilot to start helping bring more durable, dignified shelters to people who are displaced. The upper right-hand photo is a traditional home. They call them nests because they're literally cobbing together anything they can find. So there's sticks, there's bags. They are not durable. This is an area, too, of extraordinary weather extremes. And so we started deploying what's known as our iron net solution. You can actually run power to this and also build up the base when there is flooding in these areas, which are common. So again, low cost, very high impact solution there. And then there's a few slides here I want to talk about as it relates to vulnerabilities. So unfortunately, ShelterBox cannot help everyone, and the need is far too great, even when we go into a country and we're there to help communities that have been displaced. We have to prioritize the most vulnerable. Those are often women, children, elderly, people with disabilities, and we prioritize their needs, and particularly those of women, which I think for me has always been something I really love about this organization, is that we recognize that while women suffer disproportionately, so much higher death rates in disasters, high rates of gender-based violence, more likely to suffer economic losses, much more likely to be out of school, women are at the core of community recovery. And so we really work to help prioritize training women as well as providing the resources they need to help rebuild not just their lives, but their communities as well. So you'll see a variety of pictures here. Thank you, Steve. You can keep moving. Thank you. So I'm going to talk briefly about a woman who gets me up every single day to go to work. Her name is Esther. She lives in a camp in Cameroon called the Minewao Refugee Camp. She is from Nigeria, and she was a young teenage girl when Boko Haram stormed her village in Nigeria in the middle of the night, and they raped and murdered her mother, killed her father and her brothers. And she made it out that night and ran with the other girls to the border of Cameroon, where she was eventually taken to the Minewao refugee camp, where she's lived ever since. She's what they call long-term displaced. She's been there 7 years. So despite losing her family and experiencing horrific trauma, Esther became one of the best seamstresses in her block of the camp, and she is now a mother. She has 2 children, and she is a husband, and she is the primary breadwinner in her family. And she is part of what's called in the Lake Chad Basin of Africa, the forgotten crisis, because there are tens of thousands of people, mostly women and children, over 80,000 people living in this camp. And the important part for ShelterBox is that we are the only provider of tents to new arrivals at the camp. So when you're taken into the camp and you're held in a transit center until they deem that you're safe, and your life starts again when you receive your ShelterBox aid package as well as your plot of land. And for many of these folks like Esther, she's lived there ever since. And we also help the long-term displaced with basic things like tarpaulins to help her repair her shelter, or solar lanterns so she has a bit of light. So a big piece of our work, and someone that I keep in my heart all the time, we have a team right now in Cameroon working in that camp, including one of my colleagues. I was going to go there, but I am with you instead today. Next slide, please. So many of you might be wondering, what are we doing here in the United States? This has been, I think, an ongoing opportunity for ShelterBox to really get involved and help here at home. And in the past year, there have been 2 disasters and really crisis situations that really called for us to act. And we did that in partnership with Rotary. The first is Hurricane Helene. And this is where we partnered with Zone 33, Zone 34 in Western North Carolina, once in a 1,000-year storm. We started talking to our Rotary partners who said, you know what, we're going to need to help out here. There are thousands of roads and bridges out, and people need the essentials. So we quickly formed a partnership there, and I think did some pretty good work. And I'm going to show quickly that video because we had the opportunity to engage our RI president who came to the packing day. Hurricane Helene made landfall on the Florida Gulf Coast as a Category 4 storm late in the evening of September 26, 2024. Described as a once-in-a-1,000-year storm, Helene's path of destruction stretched over 500 miles from Florida to the southern Appalachians.
In just 48 hours, vast swaths of the region became unrecognizable. Communities were cut off and stranded as floodwaters washed away hundreds of roads, buildings, homes, and vehicles. The communication infrastructure left in shreds. Millions of people lost power and access to water. The largest impacts were across western North Carolina, where unprecedented flooding occurred with hundreds of fatalities, billions in property damage, and 126,000 homes damaged or destroyed. Displaced families face urgent needs amid freezing temperatures, power outages, and widespread loss.
The devastation is absolutely unbelievable still today. It is unprecedented, and it put us in a dire situation because in particular, most of our access to our northern counties in western North Carolina were cut off. We had thousands, literally 1,000 roads and bridges that were destroyed or damaged. Some of those will be closed for more than a year. I'm talking to engineers, the amount of debris in Asheville, the Asheville Metroplex alone, to be removed is right now estimated about 70,000 full dump truck loads of debris just for Asheville. Day 42, we still have families that are basically wrapping themselves in blankets, hanging out around a fire pit to stay warm.
In the aftermath of Hurricane Helene, Rotary Zones 33 and 34 partnered with ShelterBox USA to mobilize a response in western North Carolina. We worked to get needs assessments from the emergency operations centers in the hardest hit counties. ShelterBox USA and Rotary are providing hundreds of emergency kits, which include 0-degree sleeping bags, comforters, solar lights and battery packs, water filters, camp stoves, and ShelterBox mini tents for families recovering from the devastation left by Hurricanes Helene and Milton.
When I think about the partnerships that we have in Rotary, ShelterBox is a crucial one because all Rotarians have that DNA that they want to make life better for people who are suffering. Rotary has a vision statement, and it begins with a very important word. It begins with together. That's what's happening here. People are uniting, and we create lasting change for people in our own communities, around the globe, and in ourselves.
In hurricane-ravaged areas of the United States, many families are still without the basic comforts we often take for granted: warmth, shelter, and clean water, while still struggling to recover what's left of their homes and lives. Your support makes this vital work possible.
So I'm really happy to report that everyone in that warehouse that day was a Rotarian, which is, and actually the warehouse, this is the power of Rotary. The warehouse is owned by Patrick Eakes, the zone director, who let us stage and store all of the material aid and get it dropped off at his warehouse. And then we built these customized shelter packages I mentioned, those bags that say ShelterBox and Rotary. Those were filled with sleeping bags, battery packs, lights. And so we were able to help a lot of people because of that partnership. That's the power of Rotary with ShelterBox. We had another big emergency this year we responded to here in the US, and that was in January. If you keep moving, the last few slides, this is one of our ambassadors, Renee Amy. He lost his home, started volunteering that same day in Altadena as a result of those LA County wildfires, really just not too far away from where our headquarters is in Santa Barbara, about 90 minutes away. We started deploying to really Altadena, but it was, of course, the power of partner. If you can keep moving the slides, Steve, you're going to see this grocery outlet bargain market owned by Sandra and Jose Valenzuela, members of the Rotary Club in Altadena. They had the one building pretty much still standing down in the center of Altadena, which had a lot of fire damage, smoke damage, but they let us for weeks use this as a staging facility. You can see all those tents, those pop-up tents, they're all Rotary, Pasadena, Altadena, and they all helped with distributions, which went on for weeks after the fires there. So just in closing, and I know I have one last slide and maybe I'll take a couple of questions. I want to say a big thank you because District 5500 has long been supporters of the work of ShelterBox. And it's not just on the worst day ever when you think about us, but many of you are Rotary Hero Club members. What is a Hero Club? A Hero Club is a club that makes an annual contribution that supports the ongoing work of ShelterBox. And so we are deeply grateful. I know there's one club in particular that really is at the top, and that's Valley Verde. Who are those members? If you, yes, thank you. But all of you are at the heart of this organization's work. And so I'm going to ask you, if you've made a donation to ShelterBox through your club or district or directly to ShelterBox, can you please stand up? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for being the lifeblood behind this organization. We're 25 years in. I still feel like we're just getting started. And we know that the need is ever growing. So when I leave here, I'm headed to Dallas. We have our once a year, weekend long strategic planning work that we do with our board to talk about how are we going to have greater scale and impact, how are we going to raise more funds, how are we going to engage more Rotarians. We have 2 Rotarians I mentioned in this room, Leo and Don, that do the heavy lift. But if you have any interest in serving and giving these guys a hand and helping to raise some visibility, please see Don. He's going to point you in the right direction, but we need you. Well, I don't need to tell Rotarians this, but all of us have something to contribute, right? So whether it's your time, your talent, your resources to organizations here locally or around the world, your participation and your service really makes a difference. So thank you for having me. District Governor Bruce, thank you so much for the kind invitation. I appreciate it, and I hope that I can come back here again when I can stay longer. Thank you.